What's up, guys? My name is Benjamin Belt.
I'm Levi Adams, and today we're going to be talking about MSConfig, which is Microsoft's system configuration utility. We're going to be talking about the why use this utility and the how. MSConfig has 5 tabs, which are General, Boot, Services, Startup, and Tools. We're going to take it over to the desktop here and let Benjamin explain you how to bring up MSConfig.
Alright, here we are at this computer. So first thing you want to do is go to the Startup button right here on the bottom, click on it, and then type in this box MSConfig. And then you click Enter. You click Enter, and then Windows appears, and you'll see following: General, Boot, Service, Startup, and Tools.
Alright, so before we start, remember that MSConfig is for should be for temporary fixes only. MSConfig is a troubleshooting utility. Alright, so the first tab is General. In the General tab, we have 3 options. We have Normal Startup, which loads all the device drivers and services. That's probably what you have already selected. Or we have Diagnostic Startup, that loads only basic devices and services only. This should probably be a last resort. And then we have Selective Startup. So by default, it loads both system services and startup items. And you can choose either to load startup items only or just load system services. System services are things like what's built into Microsoft Windows. So you'll probably want to start those. Startup items, if it's deselected, will not load any startup items. So if you're having trouble with startup, you might want to deselect that. Next, we're going to be talking about the Boot tab.
Here we have Boot. That's a second option. This is more for advanced users. So some of them, like boot options, would be if you're having startup problems, you can use like a minimal boot, which is will run in a safe mode, and then alternate shell, which is safe mode with a command prompt. And then like next one is like networking, for example, safe mode with the networking. So these would be if you have some real problems with your computer. And as I said earlier, this is for advanced users only. So don't mess with this stuff, because since our main purpose is to show you about the services and startup problems, so we're not going to go into deep into that. And so the next would be services.
So the third tab in MSConfig is Services. Windows services are basically any background program. So whatever is running in the background, you don't actually see up front like a normal program. This services list shows all of Microsoft services, standard Microsoft services, as well as any other services you may have installed. It shows the service name, the manufacturer, which most of them are Microsoft, the status, whether if the service is either stopped or running, and if you disable, the date disabled, as you can see here. Also, you have options to either enable all if you've disabled services previously, or disable all. Another option is to hide all Microsoft services. So here you can see the services that aren't Microsoft. You can disable these and maybe help the computer run faster. This is a virtual machine, so not many services are running. But generally, you'll have services like antivirus, defragmenter tools, things like that. And remember, this is only temporary. So if you want to uninstall a service long time, for long term, try and do that another way. Next, we'll move on to startup.
Here we are at startup tools. This is the main tool that you want to look into, and that's the whole idea of us making this video and the whole point. Most of the times, you know, when you start up your computer and you look into the screen and you're like, man, it's taking me forever. And that's where the most problems are. Basically, whenever you install some programs, you know, by default, they are going into, they're going to be basically part of the startup process, which you will sometimes, you won't see them anywhere on the screen. You know, sometimes you can see some of them right here on the bottom, but what is running on your background. But in most cases, if you want to really get rid of them, you got to come here and you can disable them right on the top. Right now, as you can see, we don't have as many running, so that's fine. The least amount that runs out there in a startup, the faster your computer will perform. So why would you like to use a startup? Because sometimes it's really hard to identify the malicious software like Trojan, or some people know it as a Trojan horse, which will be basically you know, replicating itself as you know, legitimate software, but it isn't. And so sometimes you can find that here and stop that, right? Right, Levi?
Yes, that's correct, Ben.
Levi gonna tell you a little bit about tools, which is our next tool.
The fifth and final tab in MSConfig is called Tools. Here you'll find important and popular Windows tools that you might want to look into. If you're having specific problems, you can look at all these tools, and they can be very useful. On the title here we have the tool name and description. So the first one here is about Windows. It displays Windows version information. You can go through all of them. It's a real quick and easy way to get to these tools other than using the control panel. We'll talk about some tools here that might be useful to you if you're having problems and you want to troubleshoot. You may look into Event Viewer. This views monitoring and troubleshooting messages. And you can click Launch here and it launches up the tool. Go into it. We won't delve into all the details now. We might talk about it later. There's also Windows troubleshooting. If you're troubleshooting, might look into that. And of course, the Task Manager. Task Manager is similar to MSConfig. You can see here the applications, processes, services. It's a basic Windows tool. This kind of goes into detail about what we talked about in MSConfig here. And that's it for the tabs in MSConfig. So that was our tutorial video over Microsoft System Configuration Utility, otherwise known as MSConfig. We went over how to open MSConfig, what to do in MSConfig, the 5 tabs in MSConfig, which are General, Boot, Services, Startup,
and Tools.
Okay, Tools.
And basically in Tools, if you want to improve your knowledge about operating systems, you just go into Tools, and that will help you with further knowledge, and you can educate yourself more how to fix the problems and troubleshoot problems, right?
Right.
I mean, and Startup, what does Startup do, Levi?
Startup might make your computer faster if you disable some malicious programs. Might make it safer even.
That's right. So I mean, just be careful if you're a beginner. Be careful what types of things you disable there, and make sure you write it down. So if you will damage somehow you will be able to explain it to the personnel who is fixing computers, you know, how to help you out in this step.
I would like to reiterate that MSConfig is for temporary fixes only.
Yeah.
So if you're troubleshooting and want some long-term fixes, look into some of the tools in the Tools tab. This is for short-term troubleshooting.
That's right. So thanks for watching. Let's get out of here.
Learned a lot.